Ghana is set to receive the first disbursement of funds by December this year, as all is ready for the Compact 2 of the Millennium Development Authority project to take off. But how ready are we for Compact 2, which will basically be looking at our plans towards resolving the energy crisis? I will be telling you, and Bertha Tubiga will be joining us later on the show to help you choose your stocks for the week. I am Abigail Adomakwenchi, and this is Business Live. Welcome. Of course, this is the only show that critically analyzes pertinent issues affecting businesses and the economy at large. Let's start off with our business news roundup for today.
The Millennium Development Authority, MIDA, has signed a contract with the International Finance Corporation, IFC, of the World Bank Group to advise on which private entity will take over the operations of ECG for a yet-to-be-stated period of time. As transaction advisor, the IFC is expected to, among other things, help in producing the tender document for a concessionaire to be chosen on an international competitive basis. CEO of MIDA, Engineer Owura Kweku-Safo, says they're expecting that the process will be completed by the end of the year. The Millennium Challenge Account Compact 2 is meanwhile to run for 5 years. Prices of petroleum products could go up by 10% from Wednesday, 1st July 2015, unless government steps in to absorb the expected increase. According to Joy Business analysis on the factors and formula that guides the price review by the National Petroleum Authority, every 2 weeks prices of the various products could go up between 5 to 10%. The challenge for the NPA, however, has always been who should take up this cost. Government is to receive a $498.2 million grant under the Millennium Challenge Compact 2. The grant is to support Ghana to transform the power sector to meet the power needs of industries and households across the country. Ghana has been battling with power challenges for some time now, a situation which has compelled businesses and other industries to halt operations. ADB Bank risk losing prospective shareholders and investors to other institutions offering profitable investment avenues following the suspension of the bank's initial public offering. This is according to investment banker Mahama Idrisu. The general economic conditions are very tough for the ordinary Ghanaian, so if the offer is delayed, it means that there are so many investment avenues for now, so for the many who cannot wait, they will invest in their funds elsewhere. The decision of government to go for a bailout at IMF in August 2014 came as a surprise to the international investment community, but not to Ghanaian economists and analysts who chronicled the seeming failure in policy formulation and implementation following the 2012 general elections. The Chief Executive of Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement System, GIPS, Achihesi, has urged businesses to prepare their websites in readiness to receive payments online. He anticipates that online payments could lead to a boom in business, especially for those who rightly position themselves. Speaking in an interview, Mr. Hesi said efforts are underway for the Internet Payment Gateway to go live, adding that this will become a reality soon. President John Mahama has appointed Kingsley Ewuadakun as the new Chief Executive Officer of the Tema Oil Refinery. This was contained in a statement signed by the Chief of Staff, which said Mr. Ewuadakun has been asked to take over responsibility for the management of the Tema Oil Refinery. Mr. Ewuadakun, who is also the acting managing director of BOST, takes over from Dr. Alphon Kwao Doku, who has been reassigned to the Ministry of Petroleum.
That was was the business news roundup. Now let's go to the issue for today. As all is set to begin Compact 2 of the Millennium Development Authority project, there are 6 projects that will form the basis for the Compact 2: ECG and NEDCO Financial and Operational Turnaround Project, Power Generation Sector Improvement Project, among 4 others. The $498.2 million Compact 2 is said to be the largest U.S. government transaction under power for Africa to date. Ultimately, Compact 2 will look at solving the country's energy crisis. Announcing this at the launch of preparations towards Compact 2, the Chief Executive Officer of MIDA, Engineer Orua Safo, intimates all is set for the Compact 2. Take a listen.
Since the compact was signed, I think my chairman has said it, we have a board in place in December. We had a new chief executive appointed in February. As required by the program implementation agreement, we have the procurement agent and we have a fiscal agent. I'm happy to say that since then, we have almost all the key staff. In fact, of the 11 management staff, we have recruited and engaged 10, and of the 4 other key staff, meaning the project managers, we have recruited all of them. We have also signed a contract with the International Finance Corporation to provide transaction advisory services for private sector participation in ECG, converting ECG into a concession. As you'll be aware, one of the projects, as my chairman elaborated, is the ECG Financial and Operational Turnaround Project. And a key element or a key activity is concessioning ECG, attacking the governance issues within ECG, and having a credible off-taker so that independent power producers can have the confidence to come in and invest in the power sector. Indeed, over the next 10 to 15 years, it's been said that we need, in terms of generation, we need in the order of 10 to 15 billion US dollars if we are to match generation to the load growth and to build redundancy. These monies cannot come from government. They ought to come from independent power producers. But the independent power producers will not come until they are certain that we have the structures in place, we have a system in place, we have a credible off-taker, so that when they have invested into the power sector, they are sure that their investment will pay off and that the distributor will be able to collect their monies and pay them for all the work that they have done. And so at the root of Corner Compact 2 is attacking the governance structure, and I'm happy that government has decided that we will have a concession arrangement within ECG.
Now, former President John Agyekum Kufuor, who was also at the launch, is also charging managers of Compact 2 not to relent on their promise to end the power crisis.
Well, obviously, the compact entails very technical studies. Otherwise, it's not approved. And so we hear it's coming out with I believe 6-sector composition. And it's a very technical matter. What I know is that the CEO, Engineer Safo, is a very experienced engineer who, during the time I was president, was also working within the FRA. He had a fantastic record, and I believe under his leadership, the compact with its entailments would be executed with diligence and integrity. And as he said, the whole idea is to move into the power supply sector right to its roots, to tackle the causes of the instability in the provision of energy, both for industry and also for domestic users. So my expectation is that the management would be allowed to do its work, as I said, very technically and efficiently. So at the end of the day, our society is saved from the debilitation of doomsaw and so on, which is destroying the economy, making life not too pleasant.
But do you think Compact 2 will be a success?
I said so. I believe so because of what I believe I know of the chief executive. I have no doubt at all about that man being a competent person, because he, in a way, during the tenure of my presidency, we had experience of him. And this is why I dared to speak out boldly about him. And I expect he will continue like he used to be. So I have no doubt.
President Kufuor, they're very optimistic about Compact 2. Let's get some more reactions. As former finance minister and leader of the IMF negotiating team, Dr. Kwesi Boatweh, is also optimistic Compact 2 will be a huge success.
I'm confident that Compact 2 will be successful. It is focused on the power sector, which I think everybody would agree is the severest constraint on the economy and on growth. I'm encouraged that steps have been taken already to signal the preparations for Compact 2. As the chairman of the MIDA rightly pointed out, a chairman is in place, a new CEO has been appointed, the key staff are in place. I'm particularly heartened that a new CEO in place who appears to be up to the job. So the preparations are underway. It remains for us to ensure that the conditions precedent to a disbursement of the facility are all settled. Principal among them, the reorganization of ECG to make it more effective, more efficient, and more financially viable. Once we do that and the resources are disbursed, let's not forget, we're talking about close to $500 million in grants. This is not a loan. So it's absolutely important that we do what it takes and satisfy the conditions precedent to disbursement so that the money can flow. And we must remember that these are not conditions that were kind of imposed on us. These are conditions that we negotiated in the confident belief that they are aligned with our own national objectives and goals.
Positive expectations there, but what is government commitment to this particular Compact 2? Now, Minister of State in charge of Development Authorities, Akwesi Oppong-Fosu, reiterates that at the heart of Compact 2 is a strong commitment from government to implement reforms needed to transform the power sector and put it on the path to solvency and sustainability, and ultimately create an investment climate that will attract private investment.
Mr. Chairman, Ghana has accomplished a great deal in the electricity sector over the last few decades. The national electricity coverage has moved from just 15% in 1990 to 76% in 2013. The sector is, however, severely constrained by inadequate and unreliable power supply, resulting in considerable load shedding, what we now know as doomsaw. This is largely due to challenges in the sector governance and regulatory framework, insufficient power generation to meet growing demand, transmission capacity constraints, and importantly, a constrained and inefficient distribution system. Ghana loses about 2.5% of GDP annually as a result of lost economic output due to the insufficient and unreliable power supply. The Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, Ghana's main distribution utility, operates with high technical and commercial losses, has weak financial viability, and is unable to recover cost and reinvest in the necessary maintenance and expansion. Aggregate technical, commercial, and collection losses are in the order of 35%. This implies additional revenue of around 150 million US dollars, which would have been made available if the company's losses were halved. UCG is not operating on sound commercial principles, and this affects the efficient functioning of the entire electricity energy system. For example, on average in 2012, customers suffered 106 interruptions against an international benchmark of 10 per year. Fixing the problem in the distribution system will help eliminate constraints in other parts of the energy sector. It is an important part of the energy system. It is an important and difficult challenge for the economic growth of the country, and the government of Ghana is seeking to meet this challenge head-on. Government is fully aware of the fact that the problem is not only with the distribution sector, but with generation and transmission as well. However, as the primary distributor of power to businesses, schools, and households in Ghana, revamping UCG is very critical. Mr. Chair, UCG is critical to our energy goals because we need UCG to be credible off-taker of power. UCG is the linchpin in the energy system, collecting the entire revenue for the whole system. If power producers are not confident in the distributor, they will not generate at full capacity. The government of Ghana has very clear objectives for this project and for the selection of the preferred PSP option. That is to improve the quality of service, efficiency, and finances of UCG in delivering electricity to Ghanaians. It's also to mobilize private sector investments to improve distribution services and increase people's access to power. The option is also to foster local participation in both the investor and operational levels, as well as minimize the financial burden on the government of Ghana. We're also to select a partner with adequate technical and financial capacity and track record to turn around the utility through a fair and competitive process. PSP will bring about more reliable power supply and quality service delivery to businesses. This will result in an increased productivity with a rippling effect on the economy as a whole. The preferred PSP option, Mr. Chair, is for a concession arrangement. So where are we now in the preparations for Compact 2? Last week, the government of Ghana, via MIDA, signed an agreement with the IFC to act as the transaction advisor and to advise government in the selection of an appropriate partner who meets the above-mentioned criteria. Government will therefore continue to engage with all the relevant key stakeholders to ensure that preparations leading to the entry into force are expedited in order to relieve the current burden arising from the shortfall in the distribution of power to Ghanaians.
Indeed, reliable power supply is all Ghanaians want, and if Compact 2 is bringing it, why not? We are waiting for December when the first disbursement will be out. Let's do something else, and of course, the stock market is up next, and as usual, I have Bertha Tubiga here with me to discuss the stocks that you should look out for. How are you doing, Bertha?
I'm doing great. How are you too?
I'm well, by God's grace.
You sound good for
you
that.
look great as usual.
Oh, thank you.
I like your hair.
Oh, thank you so
right.
much.
So last week, the stock market, how did it perform? Any good news?
Well,
I know that it's not been all too good.
Let's say, yes, let's put it that way. The stock market was not that good or was not vibrant as we expect. No, we expected that it was not going to be vibrant. Looking at the prior week's performance and what happened last week, we saw the volumes of shares and then the value declining sharply as compared to what we saw in the prior week, and then however, we saw the composite index going up by 0.02% because we saw most of the non-financial equities actually adding up marginally to their previous quotes or their week opening quotes. We only saw 2 financial equities actually being part of the gainers list, and that was GCB and then EGL. These equities were actually not doing so well for some time. They were picking up beginning of the year, not EGL but GCB. But last week we saw them adding 5 pesos each to their previous prices. And FML is still gaining on the market, which is a non-financial equity, actually in the manufacturing. And one major thing that is driving FML is their impressive first quarter financials. That is still driving their price on the market, and it added 15 pesos to its week opening quote, and that was an absolute top gainer on the market last week.
Okay,
so
FML.
Yes. So these equities actually drove the market up, but the financial stock index, however, dropped marginally because we saw SCB and EBG. You know, EBG has also been one consistent gainer, but the prior week and last week it lost some pesos. And then SCB also lost some pesos, about 3 pesos last week. And these equities, especially with SCB, that's Standard Chartered Bank, has one of the highest market cap. And I always say here that most of these equities that have strong market caps or that forms has a higher percentage of the total market capitalization on the exchange actually drives these forces, because a plus or a minus in these equities affects the entire index. So you realize that because we saw more equities actually gaining, FML gaining 15 pesos, PZ Cousins, Unilever, TBL, and others gaining, we saw the composite, which measures the average returns, actually going up, but the financial stock index dropped marginally because of these 2 major equities actually losing.
They have that power.
Yes, we have these equities
to move the entire financial stock
index. And you know, it doesn't happen only here in Ghana. Other African markets as well. We have some looking at the top 20, top 40, and when these indices or index drops, it affects the entire market. But last week, thanks to the other non-financial equities that actually went up marginally on their previous quotes, we saw a marginal increase in the composite index, but we saw a drop in the financial stock index. So that was what happened last week. And the value of the exchange, that's the market capitalization, talking about how much the stock exchange worth at the close of Friday, it also went up marginally, to close at 64,709.56 million Ghana cedis. So that's quite impressive. But the market is still moving at a pace that investors expected that at least it could have done better than what it is doing now.
But I mean, it's still better, because looking at what is happening in the economy, anyone would expect that the market would be affected hugely, and
but
would not see, you know, these gains. And that has been an argument, and most people argue that the Ghana stock market doesn't really react to the economic indicators.
It
I mean,
does.
if they are
it
falling.
does in a way, because the city's depreciation actually affects the market.
But it's not so significant.
It's not significant, but let's look at 2013. When you compare 2013's performance, looking at our macroeconomic indicators as at that time and now, you realize that the market did significantly well, where equities were returning more than 100% to investors. But this year is not so. We're still seeing some equities, though some are added up, on a weekly basis, but we still see some of them actually trading below their year open prices, which means that if investors bought these equities at the beginning of the year, they have made some losses. But thanks to some of the equities, I always say that's why you need to seek the right investment advice before you go onto the stock market to invest in some equities, because it's not all the equities that are actually performing, and you need the right advice to be able to make the maximum returns that you need to make in the long term, not the short term. But you can also make short term returns on the Ghana Stock Exchange with the right equities that you invest in.
Okay, so what are the right equities you're talking about?
Well, this week we're looking at GCB, EGL, we're looking at FML still gaining on the market. Investors should look out for these equities, because there's a potential that these equities will add up to investors' capital by the close of the week. But we don't always look at the short term. That's when investors need to understand that it is not short-term returns that you're looking out for on the stock market, though you can make some short-term returns. That's if you're looking for just capital gain. But if you're looking for value growth, then you should look out for these equities as well, and some of the financials as well. Talking about GCB, EGL, and then FML, these equities will actually do well in the future. And also, aside these equities as well, we have other equities also on the stock market that will give you maximum returns in 2-3 years to come. CAL happens to be one of them. You don't have to feel relaxed because these equities are not doing so well. These equities are not moving on daily basis, but trust me, these equities can add up, or you can even gain more than 100% in 2-3 years to come investing on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
Right. Finally, before I let you go.
This microeconomic indicators that we're going through is quite temporal. And with this Compact 2 that you were talking about here, if it really comes in and it works perfectly and our energy crisis is actually kept or reduces significantly, then it's going to have a great impact, positive impact in our industries here in Ghana. And that also reflects in the performance of these equities on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
Now, I was going to ask before you go, the share, we always talk about the equities. Now, what is the direct relationship between the share prices and you know, the gains investors make on their stock markets?
Well, what happens is that when you buy a particular equity, okay, for 1 CD, the relationship is that when you buy it at 1 CD, there are 2 things that investors actually look out for in shares on the Ghana Stock Exchange. We have someone who is looking out for growth and someone who's just looking out for capital gains. And when you're looking out for capital gains, that means that you have to monitor, not only both investors will have to monitor the price of these shares. When the price goes up by some pesos, let's say 3 or 5 pesos, then it means that the investor that is looking out for gains actually made some gains within that short term on the market. And then the one that is looking out for growth, probably by the end of the year, if you don't sell your shares before the end of the year and you have that significant shares of that particular equity, then you tend to get some dividends.
It's not about how high or low the share price is, because we have different share prices. Some
yes,
are
we have
quite cheap, others are
very high.
Yeah.
It depends on how much the company is willing to sell it out to investors, or how much the company wants you as an individual or an institution to own its shares in the company. So when it happens like that, it's like let's say, for instance, as an individual investor, I want to invest in GCB, and GCB is like 5 CDs. We have CAL, which is like 1 CD. We have EBG, which is like 7
very
CDs.
Expensive, 5 CDs.
Well, you understand.
Yes.
It's right now it's around 4 CDs and some pesos. But when you look at this as an investor, what should tell you, why should I go in for EBG that is around 7 CDs and leave CAL, which is around 1 CD?
Very expensive.
So you know what investors actually look out for is you look at their fundamentals.
Okay.
You look at the prices of these equities on year-on-year basis, how they have performed. You look at their dividend payout ratio. You look at all these things, okay?
A lot of factors.
Look at what is happening in the company. You look at their earnings per share. All these things you consider before you invest into.
Investors have a lot of research to do. We'll do more talks on this particular issue once our viewers to understand.
Sure, that will be
some of these issues.
That is very necessary. At least they can get some information here to know the equities that they should always invest
Unfortunately, time would allow us to go in there, but next Monday, I'm sure we'll go into some of these issues.
Sure, we'll surely do that.
Well, that was Beth Atubiga with the analysis, and that'll be all for Business Live today. My name is Abigail Adomako-Enchi.